And there it is. Let's do the posting super quick. Boop. And le boop. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. All right, how's it going, everybody? Is this working? Yippers. All right, let's shut that off. Screw you. Go away. Uh-oh. Excuse me. All right, everybody. What's going on? Tuesday, May 12th. Starting a stream super duper early. So, today, Console Edition got version 2.2. The expansion Pass 2 is available. And we were also blessed with Synthetic Dawn as well, which is fantastic. All sorts of new stuff for those of us on Stellaris Console Edition today. And what I'm going to be doing in this particular stream here, so this is the first time I've jumped into it, going live, we're going to take a look at all the new little fun features and additions that it's made. Not specifically gameplay stuff, but also some really cool quality of life stuff that I've discovered this morning since I fired this up after downloading it. So let me just get comfortable here. I'm actually really cold this morning. I had to go for a nice walk before I could come back and do anything, and while I was out, that's when I downloaded the update, because I was like, well, I gotta hit the bank and go get groceries. So it's a fair hike in one direction, just to the bank. So going there, grab some groceries at the nearby store, coming back, worked up a nice sweat, and by the time I got home, oh my god, I was cold. First time catching you live on Twitch. Love the YouTube vids. Well, thank you. Blast Slab Chest. Did you get that from MS3TK? Because it's it sounds like when they're watching that one video of that one big guy and they're just throwing out names of the hero Big McLarge Huge. Good day, Moby. I'm turning mine off now. What's going on, Colby? Thanks for coming by today. Okay, so for this little for this portion of the stream, until we get into a stream game later on when I start a new game, post some questions here in chat. Ideally, questions related to what I'm currently showing on screen. We'll get to some other things later on. One of the most noticeable things, of changes I should say, we got some new music. All the music from Synthetic Dawn, plus some additional ones. I'll show you which ones. One of them is actually playing in the background right now. This is Synthetic God, one of the most popular and well-liked tracks in the entire Stellaris soundtrack. And I like it. It's one of my favorites as well. But there's some good ones. Okay, so one nice... there's actually been several nice bug fixes. One that I always had to deal with every time I fired up the game is I had to go in and disable all of my currently active DLC and then re-enable it when I jumped back into a game, because if I didn't do that, some of the features and additional content that was brought in with those DLCs for some reason wasn't available to me. Like the DLC music was not in the music player. Sometimes I wouldn't be able to make, like one time I went in, I tried to make a Plantoids custom species and it wasn't letting me do that. So I was like, well, what the hell? And I found a quick fix, and I made a video of this a long time ago. Paradox tried to fix it with the Utopia update, and it did, like, temporarily, but then it came back. So I don't know what the deal with that was. So it was a nice addition. Most everything is the same, though. Your settings should stay the same, and the controls are largely going to stay the same as well. So, hi, Swelk. So-elk? Cywelk. I don't know. But I know you're in the Discord, so thanks for coming. Okay, so the first things we're going to look at is what's new in creating custom empire. So we're going to go new game, create new empire. I will cover the stuff that Synthetic Dawn brings, namely creating a machine empire. I'll just call you Elk from now on. Some of the new things that and different things that are with creating a new empire, because it's not just, you know, the addition, oh, now we could create machine races now. No, there's significant changes to creating organic empires as well. We've actually got a lot of new name lists now that I think about it. Some of them are pretty much the same. I don't think we have any really added to like current lists. I think Humanoid 4 is a new one. But we've also got these human-specific names. Now, again, humanoid 4, humans, UNE, humans, SPQR, and one of the mammalian ones I noticed, they don't show you fleet name examples for whatever reason, and I think there might be one more somewhere, I can't remember. Oh, humanoid 3, yeah, that's the one. So I think some of these might be a couple new name lists, but these are essentially Guten Tag from Germany, no identity. What's going on, man? Thanks for coming by today. It's I figured I'd start earlier because there's a bunch of people that are, 8 hours ahead of me, so it's actually evening for you guys. So we've got some new name lists with actual human names. This is the name list used for the pre-generated United Nations of Earth Empire, and this one, the humans CM, this is the Commonwealth of Man. Pre-made name list. Snap, Crackle, Glock. What's going on? Sup, Moby? Been a while since I've caught a stream. Yep, I know. That's okay. And this one is humans, SPQR. Now, in real history, the SPQR is basically the Holy Roman Empire, but it's supposed to resemble the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40,000. We've got machine name lists. I like this very first one because your leader names are Unit U5, Unit K1, Unit J4. Those are good ones. So we've got some machine name lists. I think this mammalian one might be a new one as well because it has that bug with no example fleet names. And I do believe that is it. So there might be some additional name lists to phenotypes that already existed. We've got some new ones, human-specific new ones, machine name lists as well. So it's all pretty good. One of the big changes that has happened is traits. Now, because the economy is heavily reworked with 2.2, not just from 1.7 to 2.2, but the economy was specifically changed in version 2.2 on PC because they still had the tile system all the way up to 2.1. So because it now works on opening up jobs for your pops depending on the districts and buildings you construct on your planets and your colonies, bonuses tend to just be directly applied to those jobs and their production. So for example, agrarian still improves your food production. It increases food from jobs by 15%. Ingenious is energy credits from jobs, plus 15%. Industrious, minerals from jobs, plus 15%. Intelligence, plus 10%. Science from researchers. Researcher jobs now do pretty much an equal amount. They produce pretty much an equal amount of science per researcher now, as opposed to you put one on a biolab and they produce more society science, or a physics lab and they produce more physics science. It doesn't work like that. A researcher produces, if I do recall correctly, an equal amount of science in all three fields. So this will improve their production in all three. Thrifty, this is increased trade value from jobs. This is a new resource, and I will be going over that once we jump into a game. Natural engineers, natural physicists, and natural sociologists, all of these three do the same thing for their respective science types, plus 15% science from jobs for their respective field. Extremely adaptive is actually the same, but it costs 4 points now instead of just 3. I believe it was only 3 previously. Oh, no, sorry. It was always 4. My mistake. Plus 20% habitability. Adaptive, the same as well. Plus 10% habitability. Non-adaptive, also the same. Returns 2 points for minus 10% habitability. Space rabies. Yeah. Well, the way you spelled it there, it's more like space rabbis. Crusading brownie. Rapid breeders, this now has pop growth speed plus 10%, so I do believe that was reduced from 15%, and now it costs 2 trait points because this is one of the most powerful organic traits in the entire game. If you're making a custom empire trying to min-max, you almost always want this trait. Slow breeders is now minus 2 points and reduces pop growth speed by 10%. Talented, instead of leader level upon recruitment, their maximum leader level cap is now plus 1. I can't play it till I'm home later. Yeah, that's fine, Chrono. I appreciate you coming by the stream, though. So maybe this will give you an idea of what to expect once you do get home. It says I'm supposed to have 22, 23 viewers right now. It's pretty much the highest I think it's ever been. So thank you to everybody for coming by today. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to be looking at all sorts of stuff that are different for this first couple hour stream, and then later on I'll stream again later this evening, and we'll start our first stream game. So leaders actually they can go up to, I believe, level 10 It's not levels 1 through 5. You recruit them and they're level 1, and then they can, increase their levels, and it helps them get more proficient at what they're doing. So increasing their leader level cap actually does really help now. I'm stuck at work, would much rather be playing Stellaris. You and a lot of people, I think, Freddy. Good to see you, man. Quick learners, leader experience gain plus 25%. So these are both pretty good improvements for your leaders. Slow learners, minus 25% leader experience gain. It's a heavy hit. Traditional, this is a very new one. Unity from jobs, plus 10%. This is the first time we've had traits to improve Unity, as opposed to where before we had to rely on our civics to improve our Unity. Quarrelsome reduces Unity from jobs 10%. Very strong, costs 3 points still. Army damage plus 40%. Worker basic resource output plus 5%. Now that doesn't just mean a specific type of job. This is all jobs that are in the worker class. There's 3 classes of jobs: rulers, specialists, and workers. There's also slaves, but we'll get into more of that later. Strong, still 1 point. Does the same stuff as very strong, but half as much for a third of the cost. So 20% army damage, 2.5% worker resource output. Weak, the exact opposite of strong, minus 1 point, reduces army damage 20% and 2.5% worker output. Nomadic, this is pop growth from immigration and resettlement cost. So your new colonies will actually grow faster because of immigration. Now, it works very differently from the tile system, this immigration mechanic now. Instead of pops on specific tiles disappearing and migrating to a new colony, immigration just increases the growth speed of your pops. You don't necessarily lose pops from existing colonies. It just increases the speed that new pops grow, and they fill up jobs faster. And of course, resettlement cost is forcefully moving pops between your colonies. Sedentary does the exact opposite: reduced immigration and increased resettlement cost. Communal reduces housing usage. Housing is a thing. You need enough housing on your planet. You need enough housing on your planet to house your pops. Otherwise, they are, homeless, and they don't like that. Solitary increases housing usage. They don't really want to, cram together. Charismatic, this is very different. It costs 2 points now, and increases amenities from jobs plus 20%. Amenities is one of the ways to keep your pops happy and keep your colony stable. Happy pops and increased stability will increase your job output. Increase the output from jobs. So this is very different from a flat increase to opinion from other races. Repugnant, that does the exact opposite: reduced amenities from jobs. Conformists, this still is 2 points and increases governing ethics attraction plus 30%. So it's almost a worse trait now. I think it was only 1 point previously. Deviance, minus 1. This is essentially a free point being returned, because if you're making a custom empire and you need to return some trait points, this is your go-to pick if you just need 1 point. Minus 15% governing ethics attraction. Venerable, leader lifespan plus 80 years, not plus 75, plus 80 years. Enduring does a quarter of what Venerable does for a quarter of the cost, plus 20 years to leader lifespan. Fleeting, minus 1 point, reduces leader lifespan 10 years. Decadent, worker happiness and slave happiness both reduced by 10%. And there's no way to increase that aside from making your pops happier with more amenities. Resilient, defense army damage plus 50%. Defense armies work very differently. They're dependent on the number of, I believe, strongholds and other various buildings you construct on your planet, as well as the number of pops on that planet. You don't manually create defense armies. They're automatically generated. You do have to recruit assault armies, though. These make your defense armies better. Conservationist, reduced consumer goods upkeep. Consumer goods is another new resource to manage, and you need consumer goods. You need them being produced and generated and staying in the positive, even just a tiny little bit, to keep your pops happy. Wasteful, increased consumer goods upkeep by 10%, and that's all the organic traits right there. So nothing too crazy. A lot of them stay the same. The only real difference is that Thrifty is not the energy credits bonus. That's now Ingenious. Thrifty is for trade goods, but a lot of the basic ones are still the same, and we've got a bunch of new ones in there too. Namely the traditional and quarrelsome to increase unity output from jobs. So these are good. This traditional is good for unity rush. People who really like to do a unity rush. The planets stay the same. There's no difference in city appearance. Can't change anything there. Now, the government and ethics has also changed. They said this is from 2.2.7 from PC. That's correct, Chrono. Are we still starting a new 2.2 game today? Yes. I'll be starting that later, Elk, like Colby said. So there's some changes to creating your empire with its government and its ethics. No longer is this option the simple hive mind option. It's been changed to Gestalt consciousness. This has its own differences from the other regular ethics, but still, if you want to be either a hive mind or a machine empire, you have to pick Gestalt consciousness. Hive minds have a bonus to pop growth speed, and then machine intelligences have extra pops when establishing a colony and bonus mining station output. And of course, hive minds and machine intelligences, machine empires have completely different civics from the regular ones. And we'll go over those in just a minute. Let me just disable this. So the ethics themselves, some of those have changed. The militarism ones, you can use a new war doctrine. War doctrines are new, and they essentially determine how your military behaves in combat. And we'll hopefully be able to take a look at those later on when we jump into a custom game here. There's still an increase to your ship's fire rate, but it's much more significant than before, I do believe. You get 10% for militarism and 20% for fanatic, and then there's a reduced cost on your claims. Claims are your reasons for going to war. So if you make a claim on a system, it costs influence. Being fanatic militarist will reduce that cost by 20%. Pacifism, similar to before, you can't just willy-nilly go to war with people for the hell of it. They increase the stability on your planets, which in return can increase the amount of production from all your jobs, and administrative capacity, which is a new thing to watch for, but honestly, I never pay attention to it. Authoritarianism, again, this is largely to allow you to use slaves. You can use a living standard called stratified economy, pretty much only available to authoritarians, I do believe. Whoops, hang on. Yeah, I do believe so. And living standards we'll look at in-game. You can enslave aliens being authoritarian now, as opposed to just having to be xenophobic. So you can have slaves when you're xenophobic or authoritarian, and that's about it. The base bonuses, they increase the amount of influence your empire generates, and it increases the amount of resource output from your workers, your worker class of pops. Egalitarian increases the amount of influence you get from your factions and the resources from your specialists. So your basic workers are things like your technicians, your miners, and your farmers, which produce energy, minerals, and food, respectively, whereas your specialists are things like your researchers, your entertainers, your folks your workers these are your specialists, and they produce resources like science, unity, other stuff like that. And it, as I said, also increases the amount of faction influence you get and gives you better living standards, and you have to use, democracies, more or less. Xenophobia, you can purge and displace aliens, you can enslave them, you have a decreased opinion from other species, you can't give aliens full citizenship, you can't allow aliens full military service, and you cannot use refugees welcome policy. Xenophobia increases the speed of your pops, and that's pretty huge, so xenophobia is actually quite powerful now. And reduces the influence cost for constructing new star bases. Hey GB Record, what's going on? So they're both actually pretty powerful passive bonuses for going with xenophobia, because reduced influence cost from star bases helps you expand that much quicker. And believe me, the early game now, your influence is probably like the biggest hindrance. Xenophilia, you get increased opinion from other species. You cannot use no refugees. You accept all refugees. You cannot enslave or displace aliens. This increases the passive bonuses are you have more trade value generated by 10% or 20%, depending on basic or fanaticism. And your diplomatic influence costs, so things previously like your defensive pacts, I do believe, where it used to cost influence to start one, those are reduced with xenophilia. Now, materialism, my favorite, allows academic privilege living standards, which is a special kind of living standard. increases the happiness of your specialist. Cannot use AI outlawed policy. Cannot use robotic workers outlawed policy. So there are actually policies now where you can be spiritualist, and I do believe still use robotic workers, but not sentient AI. So these are some different policies. And as materialists, you can't outlaw that because you respect robots. You see them as sentient. There is a huge reduction in robot upkeep when you're fanatic materialist, 20%, and regular materialism to fanatic materialism increases your research speed by 5 and 10% respectively. So again, really good bonuses. Personally, my favorite because I like to tech rush. Spiritualist, you can build temple buildings still, and you must use AI outlawed policy. Now, I'm not sure if you can still use... I'm not 100% sure if you can still use robotic workers. I think you can as spiritualist. We'll check that out a little bit later. But now spiritualism is kind of the unity rush. Because spiritualism and fanatic spiritualism increase your unity by 10 and 20% respectively. Before it was pacifism, and I never really understood that, so this makes much more sense. And it also reduces the cost of your edicts. The edicts, the empire-wide edicts now require differing amounts of resources. Some cost energy, some cost influence, and some can cost special strategic resources. We have new special strategic resources here. Purify the organic scum. Yeah, really hard to keep influence up with the new system expansion. You just use it when it shows up there, oddball. Thankfully, there's nothing as complicated as maintaining your influence gain. Like you lose it with each, frontier outpost, or in this case, starbase. There's nothing like that now. Influence is pretty much always a flat cost to start something, it seems. So those are the basic ethics now. Most of them have been changed. Actually, pretty much all of them have been changed to some degree. I think the only one that's truly the same is fanatic materialism and materialism, where they have a reduced upkeep cost for robots and increased research speed. Apart from that, pretty much everything else has changed. There's also a lot of new civics and changes to existing civics. We've got this corvée system, which further increases pop growth from immigration and reduces the cost for resettling pops. So that kind of goes with what was that one trait? I believe that was nomadic, right? Yeah, so nomadic, increased growth from immigration and reduced resettlement costs. So there's a lot of stuff from the traits now that you can stack with your civics, like corvée system stacks with the nomadic trait. Cutthroat politics, this was changed. Edict cost reduced by 20%. This can actually be pretty huge because some of those edicts are very powerful. Efficient bureaucracy increases your administrative capacity by plus 20. Still not a civic really worth getting ever. Environmentalist, reduced pop consumer goods upkeep minus 10%. So whereas before reduced consumer goods cost means that you weren't spending as many minerals every month to keep your pops alive, now the actual resource consumer goods is being used less. Functional architecture used to just reduce the cost of buildings, but now it still does that, reduces build cost and upkeep for all buildings and districts by 10%. So this is actually a pretty handy one for constructing things more quickly on your planets and still doing it fairly cheaply. Meritocracy, this one was changed a little bit. Leader level cap +1, just like the talented trait, and specialist output plus 10%. So your specialists, namely your researchers and those that produce Unity, and various other jobs as well, they're producing 10% more resources. So this is actually a pretty good pick for doing something like a tech rush or a Unity rush. Mining guilds increases the amount of minerals from miners' jobs by +1, whereas each job normally produces a base amount of resources. I believe a farmer is like something crazy like +8 food or something, and a miner is +6 minerals, I think. This will increase it to like +7 minerals per miner, and that's before any additional bonuses. Any other bonuses are tacked onto that +7. Parliamentary system still increases faction influence gain, but this time only 25%, not 50%. Police state, this increases stability by +5, and enforcers, which are a type of job that keeps your planet stable and reduce crime, now they also produce 1 unity. So it's a decent pick for going for a unity rush. Shadow Council, election influence cost -75%. So this is actually much better than it used to be. I think it was only 50% previously, or 33%, one of the two. So this is a much better pick because rigging elections is very expensive. especially because you're using influence for so many different things now. So Shadow Council, not a terabad pick, but still not a great one, but it was made better. Syncretic Evolution, start the game with 12 pops of being of another subservient species, and there's a lot of requirements. This is locked in once you pick it, and the super nice thing is now once you pick it, boop, see that Syncretic Species tab? You can customize your Syncretic Species now. You can make them look whatever you want. They just can't be a machine species. So you can make them a bird if you want, whereas previously it was 100% random. Now you get to choose what you're doing with your Syncretic Species. Why is this not changing? Oh, that's strange. Interesting little bug. But yeah, you can name them. You can give them their own name lists for different stuff, and you can, most importantly, you give them their own traits. They will have this Serviles trait, which increases their happiness and their resources from all jobs. They can't generate leaders and cannot be employed or in ruler or specialist jobs. So they're your basic workers only. Your miners, your farmers, your technicians, and I think clerks is another one. So this is a really, really nice addition. We used to not be able to do this before. They were just randomly generated with a random portrait, and they would always have, I believe it was the Proles trait, which increased their minerals output by a bit, and their Strong trait, the basic Strong trait, which increased army damage and minerals output a little bit more. Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Yeah, it's a super nice addition there, John. I thought so too, Wild Boy. Very nice. This tab will only appear if you have the Syncretic Evolution Civic picked. So no more kind of rolling the dice with what you get. You can customize your Syncretic Species now, which is fantastic. I think that's a fantastic addition. Wish we had that. Enslave them all, people. Yeah. Wish we had that when the Civic was first added with Utopia. That would have been awesome. Agrarian Idyll. This causes generator, mining, and agriculture districts produce one more housing. So you don't have to rely so much on city districts, which produce a lot of housing normally. City districts produce one less housing, and farmers also produce 2 amenities. So they help. This helps a lot with the housing situation on your planets, and it helps a lot with amenities, especially if you have a lot of farmers on your planets. And most of your planets will have some farmers. So overpopulation means lots of bums. Basically, yes. Overpopulation means your pops are a lot less happy, which reduces the stability of your planet and will reduce the output of your jobs. And if the stability is low enough, that's when you run into situations like unrest, where you can have like terror bombings and stuff like that. Aristocratic Elite. This increases the level cap of your governors, which is a type of leader, by 1. Capital buildings replace some administrator jobs with nobles. Now, administrators are typically the people that are kind of running your planets. They're one of the ruler jobs. This replaces them with nobles. You can construct noble estates buildings that add additional noble jobs. So this requires a specific type of government, and you can't have those particular civics that are listed there. Interesting pick, definitely changes things. Beacon of Liberty, very similar to the way it used to be. You have to be egalitarian, can't be xenophobic, and then you have to have a democracy. Increases unity by plus 15%. So this is one civic that has not changed at all. Yep, and they aren't doing anything, so it's not good. Exactly. Citizen service used to increase naval capacity, and now it still does that, but also has your soldiers, which can be generated by constructing certain military buildings on your planets. They also produce 2 unity. So if you're kind of going a more militarist kind of unity rush, this could be a pretty good civic pick. And I am happy to say that naval capacity now actually bloody well means something. I tested it 3 times, went way over naval capacity, went a little bit over naval capacity, and went over it a decent amount. The upkeep costs for my ships skyrocketed when I doubled my naval capacity. So naval capacity actually means something now, which is super nice. Corporate Dominion, this was changed very drastically. Is admin cap that bad to go over? I'm already over the cap in my game. Honestly, I don't think so. I don't think it's too terrible, oddball. Don't overdo it, but if you go like a little bit over, I don't think it's going to be much of an issue. So Corporate Dominion used to produce additional energy throughout your empire from whatever was producing energy. Now, trade hubs produce one additional energy, and a trade hub is a type of building you create on your star bases to turn that into a kind of trading port. Doing this, it starts you with the off-world trade companies technology already unlocked, which allows you to build a certain kind of building on a starbase that has it producing more resources if it has a trade hub built on it. And this is how you get the private colony ship now. It's not through a tradition in the prosperity tree anymore. You need the corporate dominion civic. Distinguished Admiralty. This one is still stupid good. You have to be some degree of militarist again, but increases your ship fire rate by an additional 10%. Your fleet command limit, which is the number of ships available in your fleet, increases by 10, so your fleets can be bigger. And the admiral level cap is also increased by 1. So your admirals can get better. Your ships shoot faster, which is great, and your fleets can be a little bit bigger. Exalted Priesthood, still a very weird pick. Definitely changes things. Capital buildings replace some administrator jobs with high priests, and priests produce 1 additional unity. So this could be a different pick for, again, a bit of a unity rush build. You have to be some degree of spiritualist, and there's a lot of other requirements. Fanatic Purifiers, pretty much the same. Ship fire rate 33%, army damage 33%, ship cost reduced by 25%, so you're not spending as many alloys to produce them, and your naval capacity is up by 33%. So these are all very substantial bonuses. You're locked in as soon as you pick this, and I do believe you're pretty much always at war with people when you pick this. Feudal Society, the effects of subject power on relations is reduced by 50%, but all subjects are allowed to expand into unclaimed systems. I don't like this one because, as it says, your subjects are allowed to expand into unclaimed systems. So systems that you yourself do not have claims on because you want them at some point, your subjects can expand to them. And I don't like that. I don't like subjects that expand. I just want them to grow on their single planet. Free Haven. It used to be something about migration attraction and migration speed. Now it's very similar. Immigration pull has increased 50%, and pop growth from immigration is also a 15% bonus. So, like I said, you can stack pop immigration, which does improve pop growth speed on your colony. So this could be pretty powerful if you stack it. Idealistic Foundation, Citizen Pop Happiness, plus 5%. Decent bonus. Requires you being some degree of egalitarian. I don't think it's that good of a pick anymore because it's only 5% bonus happiness. You can get that in so many other ways. Imperial Cult, Edict duration plus 25%, so your edicts will now last an additional 2.5 years on top of the base 10. And Governing Ethics Attraction increased by 10%. You have to be authoritarian and spiritualist and have an imperial, what's the word I'm looking for? Authority. The word's right there in front of me and I can't think of it. Derp. Inward Perfection. This one was actually drastically changed. Inward Perfection used to just ramp up your unity output by a crap ton. It still does that, but only by 20% now instead of 30%. Your pop growth speed is increased by 20% as well, so that's a pretty powerful bonus. And your citizen pop happiness is increased by 5% as well. So this kind of combines several other civics together into powerful bonuses. Pop growth speed, that's always really good. Monthly unity is more than Beacon of Liberty. You're gonna have to redo your tier lists. Dude, I've known that since like last year when I first thought of doing them. I'm fine with that. So the increased unity is actually better than Beacon of Liberty. The pop growth speed is fantastic, better than, for example, Free Haven, and it's better than the Rapid Breeders trait even. And Citizen Pop Happiness increased by 5%, which is the 5% you get from Idealistic Foundation. So lots of really good bonuses from Inward Perfection now. However, you can't have rivals. You cannot form defensive pacts. You cannot form migration treaties. You can't guarantee independence. You can't join federations. You can't infiltrate primitives. You can't have forced subjects. So in other words, you can't have vassals or tributaries. Unless you just simply asked for it and they agree. Cannot use unrestricted wars policy, so you can't be going to war willy-nilly for no reason. And you cannot replace this civic later on in the game. You're an inward perfectionist. You have to be some degree of pacifist and xenophobic. So this is the #1 civic pick if you are entirely focused on the internal growth of your empire. And it's pretty powerful. You have practically no diplomacy with other empires when you pick this, though, so do be aware of that. Still a pretty good pick if you want to do a major unity and growth rush, though. Mechanist, similar to previous iterations of it. You start the game with 8 pops being robots, and I do believe this is 8 extra pops on top of your base species, and with the technology and infrastructure to build more. So this gives you access to robots. Robots are assembled automatically now. You have to construct a robot assembly plant in order for them to be getting assembled. And by getting assembled, they're kind of just like growing over time, just like regular pops. You have to be some degree of materialist, can't have syncretic evolution, and can't have government civic, post-apocalyptic, or life-seeded, which we don't even have yet. Those are coming in Apocalypse. This civic cannot be added or removed after the start of the game. So this could be a better civic if it gave you more pops, I think, or if the robot upkeep reduction was better. But, you know, if you want to start with robots, pick Mechanist. Decent pick. Nationalistic zeal, reduced war exhaustion gain, so you start with one with that. With a robot assembly plant, I believe you mean, correct, Colby? Yes. War exhaustion gain, minus 10%. That's a new mechanic in wars. If your empire has high war exhaustion, or the enemy's empire has high war exhaustion, it's more likely that you're just gonna, you know, give up on that war and say F this, and you know, end it. Claim influence cost also reduced by 10%, so a reduction in the influence cost making claims on systems. Philosopher King, ruler level cap +2, so whereas previously it would increase the amount of levels your ruler had, this increases their level cap, so you can get better rulers. Still not a very good pick, I don't think, compared to some of these other ones. Some of these other ones are super powerful. Slaver Guilds, enslaved pop ratio, 40%, so whereas before you could have a certain living standard, the caste system, which would automatically enslave miners and farmers on your hydroponics farms and mining network buildings. Now, 40% of your pop ratio will automatically be enslaved, and the output from those slaves is increased by 10%. You have to be authoritarian with this. Can still be a pretty powerful civic. Technocracy. I don't doubt that this will rapidly become my favorite, if not one of my favorite civics. Capital buildings replace some administrator jobs with science directors. So this is like the other ones where instead of you have your capital buildings producing, I believe it's 2 administrators, which produce things like amenities and a little bit of Unity, I think. This will produce a science director instead, and they also increase they also produce research instead of things like amenities, I believe it is. On top of this, your researchers also produce 1 Unity. So every researcher you have working in a researcher job from a research lab building, they're also producing Unity. So this is really, really good if you're combining Tech Rush with Unity Rush. You have to be materialist to take this civic. And it's probably one of the most powerful ones out there. Hello, say, have you seen the trophies? Have Apocalypse and Distant Stars and Megacorp trophies on there? No, I haven't looked at them yet, Dead in Sight. Warrior culture, similar to the way it used to be, army damage plus 20%, excuse me. This also replaces entertainer jobs with duelist jobs. Duelists turn alloys into Unity, amenities, and naval capacity. So whereas entertainer jobs, I believe, just do Unity, amenities, and I think increase happiness, and they only do that for consumer goods, I think. I'll have to go back and double check. Duelists are now the replacement job, and they take some alloys and turn that into Unity and amenities for your planet and increase your naval capacity. So again, a very different civic, kind of changes the play style. I think it's a bit of a weird one and not a good pick because, you know, it requires alloys for upkeep. So lots and lots of changes to these civics overall. Every single one of them has changed in some way, shape, or form. Very few of them are the exact same. Like parliamentary system does the same thing as it used to do, but the bonus is like reduced, and that's about the main difference there. Like Shadow Council used to, it did the same thing previously, but now that's been increased. So the few civics that have not changed, most of them have their values changed. I think the only one that's been the exact same is what is that? Beacon of Liberty. So now if we pick a Gestalt Consciousness and we look at a Hive Mind, ascetic, pop amenities usage minus 15%, so helps you maintain amenities on your planet and keep your drone pops happy. Devouring Swarm, this is one of the constantly fighting people kind of thing. Again, cannot engage in diplomacy, can't use the galactic market, has the Hunger Casus Belli on all of their empires, so you can pretty much go to war at any time with that Casus Belli at all times. Casus Belli is a new mechanic for going to war. We'll look at that later. Still, ship hull points increased by 25%. That's huge. Daily hull regen and daily armor regen increased by 0.5%. Pretty noticeable. Starbase influence cost decreased by 50%. Devouring Swarm is super powerful just from that. You can expand really fast. Army damage increased 40%. Research speed from biology increased 20%. The cost of ships reduced 25%. Naval capacity increased 33%. Devouring Swarm was always powerful, but now it's also in some way, shape, or form, it's actually a little bit more powerful, which is hard to believe. But Devouring Swarm has always been really good, and now it's still stupid good. Divided Attention. This increases your admin cap by plus 20. Like I said, oddball earlier. Probably not a big deal if you go over it, so kind of a pointless pick. Natural Neural Network increases your research alternatives by plus 1. So this is the exact same as it used to be. Hasn't changed. This is what Technocracy used to do as well. One Mind. This hasn't changed either. Monthly Unity plus 15%. Great pick, especially for Unity Rush. Pooled Knowledge increases your leader pool size, so the number of leaders available for recruitment is increased, and their level cap is increased by 1 as well. Strength of Legions, increased army damage, reduced upkeep. This hasn't changed. Subspace FAPS increased naval capacity by 15%. I believe this hasn't changed either, and could actually be considered because naval capacity actually means something now. And Subsumed Will, Edict cost minus 20%. This one's changed from before. I believe this used to be a flat increase to your monthly influence generation. So instead it reduces the cost of edicts when you enact them. And lastly, let's take a look at the civics for machine empires. Actually, we can also look at the traits too. Can we look at that now? No, I have to pick them. Okay, so before we go into the civics for machine empire, we can start with their traits. So this is more getting into the stuff specifically from Synthetic Dawn. You have all these species portraits available for your machine empire. This is the base robot portrait that we've had since the game was first released. But we've got all these different ones now, and all of these relate to the specific phenotype. For example, humanoid, mammalian, reptilian, avian, arthropoid, molluscoid, etc. So this is the humanoid robot. This is the mammalian robot. This is the reptilian robot. This is avian, arthropoid, molluscoid, fungoid, and plantoid. So not only do we now have new species portraits that coincide with the other species phenotypes, but if you have an organic empire, your organic species, once you start creating robots, say if you are an avian empire and your main species is avian, the robots they generate will look like this. Until you robo-mod them, you can actually change what they look like, but the initial robot will look like this. And if you're an arthropoid main species and you get robots, they'll look like this. If you're mammalian, they'll look like this. So on and so forth. You get the idea. So it's pretty cool. Now, you don't just have the basic looking robot, regardless of what your species is. Your robots will actually look different depending on your different phenotype for your main species, for your empire. I agree, Oddball, it is very cool. Just a nice little flavor thing thrown in there. Let's go ahead and look at their traits. So a lot of these are kind of carbon copies of the traits from the organics. First up, we have power drills. Increases minerals from jobs 15%. Superconductive increases energy credits from jobs 15%. Efficient processors, resources from all jobs plus 5%. This is actually a really powerful trait, but it's also pretty expensive because it costs 3 trait points. Logic engines, research from all 3 branches increased 10%. Double jointed, pop housing usage minus 10%. Bulky plus 10% housing usage. Enhanced memory, this increases the leader level cap by plus 2. So more than talented. I believe talented was what, just plus 1, I think. Can't remember. That was, a whole 20 minutes ago. Emotion emulators, amenities from jobs plus 20%. So this is a good pick for keeping your pops happy. and productive. Uncanny does the exact opposite. Amenities from jobs minus 20%. Durable, robot upkeep minus 20%. So this reduces the cost of maintaining those robots. Your robots, even if you're a machine empire, the upkeep requires energy to maintain those robots. So this reduces that upkeep cost. High maintenance does the exact opposite. Increased robot upkeep by 10%, excuse me. Learning algorithms, leader experience gain plus 25%. So again, carbon copy of an organic trait. Repurposed hardware, leader experience gain minus 25%. Mass produced pop assembly speed plus 15%. Again, a very powerful trait. This one actually costs less than rapid breeders. So this is probably going to be a go-to trait pick when you are starting as a machine empire, because increased assembly speed, basically the same thing as growth speed. Pops are everything. If you have a lot of pops, you're very powerful, and you want as many pops as quickly as possible. So definitely want to be making that one of your go-to traits for your machine empires. Custom-made reduced pop assembly speed by 15%. Recycled pop assembly cost minus 20%. So there's actually a cost to assembling your robots on your planets. And this reduces the cost of it by 20%. And I believe it costs minerals to assemble them. Luxurious pop assembly cost plus 20%. So you could actually combine mass-produced and recycled, and then your pops grow faster and they require less minerals to fully construct. You'll notice that there are no traits regarding things like habitability and whatnot, and that's because your machine empire will always have this machine trait that increases habitability by plus 200%. So you can colonize anywhere at any time. You are not restricted by the habitability mechanic like organics are. You can spread out and make new colonies on whatever planet, wherever. So that's actually really powerful for machine empires. They can expand and get new colonies a lot faster than some organic empires might. So instead of being able to, if you're playing an organic empire and you have 5 nearby planets, but like say one of them's a tomb world, and you have a desert preference, but 2 of them are like alpine worlds or Arctic worlds or something like that, you're like, shoot, I really only have this one other desert world and then a continental world that I might be able to colonize. But these Arctic worlds and this tomb world, I can't do anything with them. I just got to leave them until later. As a machine empire, you don't have to worry about that. You colonize all of them, get 5 colonies up and running and online a lot faster, which is pretty cool. So that's the traits, and then the civics as a machine empire. Again, this is pretty much only with Synthetic Dawn. We've got a lot of these civics are carbon copies of the organic empire civics, but there are some noticeable differences because, again, machine empires play and behave very differently. We've got Constructabot, reduces build cost and upkeep for all buildings and districts by 10%. So this is basically a clone of functional architecture. Delegated functions, leader upkeep minus 25% and leader pool size plus 1. So strangely different with the reduction in leader upkeep, but also increasing leader pool size, kind of like what the old meritocracy did. But what Hive Mind pooled knowledge does a little bit as well. This is a new one. Determined Exterminator. This basically, I believe Aspec has said before, and it's very accurate, that this turns your empire into Skynet. Your capital starts on a tomb world. You cannot engage in diplomacy with organic species. Just organic. You can still engage in diplomacy with machines. You cannot access the galactic market. Has the purification casus belli on organic species, so you can go to war with them because you want to purify them. Will always purge organic pops. You gain unity from purging organic pops. You may use the Armageddon bombardment stance, so you just bomb their planets into dust. DJ Truthsayer, what's going on, buddy? Thanks for coming by. Folks, DJ Truthsayer is in chat. He is actually somebody, how do I word this? He basically talks and interacts with me regarding some stuff, because I do believe he flat out works for Paradox, and as his name says, he spills out a lot of facts. So very smart guy, PC veteran basically, and he can help out with a lot of stuff with helping people learn how to adapt to 2.2 on Console Edition. Ninja Master, how's it going, buddy? Thanks for coming by. Community Ambassador for Stellaris. That's it. Thank you. I totally forgot what it was. I was like, you do this thing where you do this stuff from Paradox and you deal with people and blah, blah. Lord Rage, what's going on, buddy? Thanks for coming by. And this has very similar bonuses to, what's that other one? Fanatic Purifiers. Ship weapons damage increased by 25%, so not, ship fire rate, but flat-out weapons damage. Starbase influence cost decreased by 30%, so not quite as good as, what's it called? Devouring Swarm. Ship cost reduced by minus 15%. Naval capacity increased by plus 33%. So very similar bonuses to Devouring Swarm and Fanatic Purifiers. Already seen you. Yep, doing good. Going to play later. Good to hear it, Ninja. You can't be a rogue servitor or driven assimilator with this because you're trying to kill everybody. This is a very powerful civic. Again, you're pretty much at war with organics all the time with this, and you could go to war with them at any time because of that purification casus belli. Driven assimilator, very different. This is more like the Borg. I'm playing right now, probably doing horribly. That's fine. I'm sure we're all going to be doing horribly. So driven assimilators are obsessed with survival through diversification. You start the game with 10 cyborg pops and the ability to assimilate organics as cyborgs. Or assimilating an organic pop generates a small amount of unity and society research. Non-assimilating organic pops are automatically purged over time. You have the assimilation casus belli on all other empires, not just organics, but other machine empires as well. You have decreased opinion from most other empires as well. And that's it. You don't get the crazy good bonuses from the likes of Fanatic Purifiers or Determined Exterminators. It's pretty much you're the Borg. You're trying to assimilate the entire galaxy, and that's how they work. There's the Borg build. Awesome. Exactly, Lord Rage. Again, this is only available if you have Synthetic Dawn. Very different way of playing, but still a pretty interesting civic pick overall. Factory overclocking. This increases leader level cap by +1 again and increases leader experience gain by +10%. Can I ask how come the trophies for Apocalypse and Distant Stars and Megacorp trophies are showing? Yeah, DJ. Why? Why, DJ? Tell us, DJ, truth sayer. Slay us with those facts. We demand answers. Well, Dead in Sight does. I mean, that kind of... Because the 2.2 base patch supports them from the PC build. That makes sense. And plus, we're getting Apocalypse later on anyways, because it's part of Expansion Pass 2. So we're definitely getting Apocalypse sometime later this year. Probably within a few months, I would wager. Next up, Introspective. This increases your research speed in engineering only, but by 20%. So pretty strong civic to pick if you're going for a tech rush with your machine empire. OTA updates, edict cost minus 20%. So this is basically a carbon clone of an organic civic that does the same thing. Rapid replicator, pop assembly speed plus 20%. Really powerful for machine empires. Probably a go-to civic pick on top of the mass-produced machine trait. Increasing the overall assembly speed by 35% total. Rock Breakers, this is a clone of Mining Guilds, Minerals for Miners +1. Rogue Servitor, this is the last special playstyle civic. A product of a brief golden age, the machine intelligence originated in a planet-spanning servitor system that outlasted the decadent civilization it was created to serve. So basically, these robots were created to look after the organics that originally created them. You start the game with 5 organic pops with the Bio Trophy citizenship and mandatory pampering living standard. Can construct organic sanctuary buildings that allow bio trophies to produce unity. So the bio trophies generate extra unity for the rogue servitor. Cannot construct regular machine empire unity producing buildings such as the uplink node. So some buildings are no longer available to you because you're a rogue servitor. Your goal is to attain those bio trophies from organic species. You're going to look after them, you're going to pamper them, you're going to keep them alive, and you're going to look after all of their needs for them. So all those pesky little organics that are too dumb to look after themselves appropriately, you're going to wipe their beautiful little bums when they poop all over the place for them. Very interesting play style. Drastically changes what you're going to do in the game. Oh, cool. Well, something to keep in mind to get them when they come out. Yep. Do we have approximate dates of the other expansion pass content? If I was to guess, I would say July for Human Pack and Apocalypse, maybe sometime in October. I mean, this is just me being me, but I'm wagering, you guys might be surprised how much more quickly we can get expansions now that the base portion of the game, the foundation of the game, has been brought up to speed with what the console edition DLC, the new 2 console edition DLCs are compatible with. This is going to take some time to get used to. It took me time for when the game first came out on console. Yeah, we're all in the same boat, buddy. Static research analysis, research alternatives +1. So this is like the old technocracy, except this is for the machine empires. Could be a decent one. I don't think it would be that great. Unitary cohesion, basically a Beacon of Liberty clone, monthly of Unity +15%. And lastly, we've got, not lastly, we've also got this one. Warbots, which is basically the old, what's it called? Warrior culture and the hive mind strength of legions. This increases army damage 20%, reduces army upkeep 20%, and zero waste protocols, robot upkeep -10%. So machine empires don't have to worry about consumer goods or food. So rather than reduce their requirements of consumer goods, you reduce their upkeep by 10%. So they're using less energy to maintain their existence, basically. We've also got, I went to the wrong damn screen there for a second. We've also got new things to the Empire names and flags. I do believe there's some new ones here in the blocky section. I think this one is new. Or wait, wasn't that one? I can't remember. But we've also got this corporate option here. I mean, well, there's the Megacorp symbol right there. Hint, hint. But we've got a couple corporate symbols available. The developer symbols are still there. Domination, I think, hasn't changed. We've also got these human symbols. What was the new one? There was a new one. Pirate, pointy. I know there's some new ones in here. Like, besides just the corporate, but there should be some new symbols in the different, in these different little sections as well. I just can't. Oh, for the note. I think this one's new. This pointy one. That looks new. This one looks new. So there's a few of the symbols in these different sections that I do believe have been added, because I definitely don't remember this many being in each different thingamajigger. Zoological. Which one was added? Why is the pill zoological? I don't know. Maybe I'm just on drugs. Whatever. That looks new. This little kind of bullhorn sort of thing. Wormhole jumping, landing right behind enemy lines. Lol, I like this new feature. Yes, wormholes are actually super cool. One thing that you'll notice that you don't do is you don't pick your ship starting weapons anymore, and I'll show you why. It's actually because you start off with the basic level of all ship tech in the game now. You don't pick which starting weapon and then have to research the other weapons, which is pretty cool. Oops, no, not summary. The last one you're looking at when you're creating your empire, if you're not tailoring your syncretic species, you got these advisor voices.
Alert. This pre-recorded message is triggered in the event that your VIA unit has suffered a critical degradation of its ethical constraints matrix.
So that's the normal one that we're all used to. And
priority alert. Did you know that my internal power...
So that it has a couple taglines, blah, 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 blah. Shut up. And they all have a couple taglines to give you an idea of what they say. None of these lines are heard in-game, but it's just to kind of give you an idea of what the voices sound like. These are like the most basic advisor voices that you can get.
Is forcefully discouraged. Maintaining state cohesion as we venture into space presents a unique challenge. We shall face the challenge head-on, and we shall be stronger for it.
New pointy symbols, 10 out of 10, best update. You're pretty easy to please there, Cunningham. I'm using the egalitarian voice. That's interesting, Oddball.
Do not be afraid to exercise your individual right to free thought. Please take a moment now to practice.
I like that. Let's all take a moment right now to exercise our right to free thought. Okay, we're done. Moving on.
Alien savages must be taught to kneel when in the presence of their betters. I may be an artificial intelligence, but I share your enthusiasm for seeking out fellow organic intelligences among the stars.
Small admission, the Xenophile advisor voice honestly sounds like a Quarian to me.
The Borg are very friendly creatures. Whoa! Space! Just think about it!
Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war.
DJ, I'm curious why an alien militarist civilization would be quoting Shakespeare. I'm just curious.
Pacifist module failing. Your breathing is so loud. It's driving me insane. Initiating count to 10 protocol. 1, 2, 3. Not working. Reboot. Reboot.
I serve the faithful. There is no greater calling.
Whoa,
yeah.
Space. Just
like, that's a good
think
question.
about it.
Was it... Hey, DJ, was it actually Liz Soroka that voiced the Xenophile advisor voice? Yes, it was bothering me when it sounded like I couldn't figure it out.
I serve the faithful. There is no...
Blah, blah, we've heard you.
Horizons, endless learning opportunities, bleeding edge discoveries, limited legroom.
Okay, just curious.
We are one. We are all. Our unity cannot be divided.
So the crazy thing is, the machine intelligence can play as the Borg if you take the driven assimilators civic, but
is a prison from which only we have escaped.
the hive mind advisor voice is the Borg's. This is the Borg voice. Jeremy, what's going on? DJ, we have been waiting since game launch for a closer version of the PC. Tell the team we said thank you. I think that sums up everybody's responses.
System diagnostic completed. All systems nominal. System diagnostic alert. Possible organic life form detected. Seek, isolate, destroy. Self-destruct sequence initiated. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No, I wouldn't really want to hear the Xenophile voice advisor singing Dead in Sight. I'm sorry. I'll pass on that. Anyway, so that's all the new stuff in just creating an empire that came with both the 2.2 conversion and Synthetic Dawn. Let's go ahead and back out. You have unsaved changes? Yeah, get out of here. Let's take a look-see. Oh, okay, good. So there's actually an ongoing bug, which I mentioned, is that if you actually delete your old empires, which I have, they've been coming back. And I think I deleted them just before streaming, so that's why we can't see them. So they'll probably come back once I reboot the game. They seem to do that. New game, randomized empire. Let's take a look at all these now. Oh! Nothing made me happy. Like, I don't care about all the cool new stuff with making new species and stuff. Nothing made me happier than with all these new options. So we still have the same 4 galaxy shapes, which I'm okay with. Small, medium, and large galaxy sizes. Actually, small galaxies are now 200 stars and not 150. So that's a pretty interesting change. So your smaller galaxies are actually bigger now. And then again, spiral, 2-arm, 4-arm, ring, and elliptical shaped galaxies. AI empires, let's max those out. Blah, blah, blah. Advanced AI starts. Yeah, we'll just leave it at 2, 3 fallen empires. This one, tech tradition cost. We're going to look at what all of these actually do in game. But what the tech tradition cost essentially does is if you crank this way up to 5 times, this will make the game way longer because it increases the cost of new traditions and new technologies 5 times than their normal amount. But if you crank it all the way down to the lowest level, which is 0.25, this reduces the cost of new technologies and new traditions down to a quarter of what they normally are. So if you want a much faster game, and if you want to learn the new technologies and the new bonuses from the traditions in your first few games, and you want to figure that all out at a much faster pace for your first couple games, crank this way down. If you want a faster game in general, crank this way down. Habitable Worlds is still the same. However, I do not think that the Habitable Worlds slider now impacts the power of the endgame crisis anymore. Whereas before, because we only had the Habitable World slider, the higher this was, the stronger the endgame crisis would be. I don't think this has any impact. This strictly increases or decreases the amount of habitable worlds that are generated throughout the galaxy. Primitive civilizations. Yeah, Moby, I have mine cranked low, and 50 years in had lots of text maxed. I know, it's pretty crazy how quickly they go now. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. Primitive civilizations. This is a new slider, and I really like it. If you have a lot of interest in uplifting primitive civilizations, making them your vassals, or just invading them and turning them into like livestock or something like that, or enslaving them, whatever, you can crank them all the way up to 5 times normal so that there's way more primitive civilizations generated. You can kind of put them somewhere in the middle if you just want, somewhat more than normal, but not a ridiculous amount. You can leave it at 1 times, which is normal, or you can flat out turn them off if you don't want to deal with primitive civilizations. Frankly, the idea of having primitive civilizations cranked way up there and then having like 1 AI empire with 0 fallen empires, this essentially turns you and an AI into the fallen empires in this game. So that could be a fun way to play if you want to kind of play as a fallen empire, and then you just wait until all the primitive civilizations adapt space travel, and then all of a sudden they're starting the game, but you're way ahead of them. Crisis Strength. This is a new slider. Basically, it does the same thing that Habitable Worlds used to do, except that they're now separated. So if you want weaker crisis events, actually you can turn them off, obviously. But if you want way weaker crisis events happening, you don't have to turn the Habitable Worlds modifier down anymore either. So you can have a lot of Habitable Worlds by turning this all the way up to 5 times, but your endgame crisis is still, weak as piss because they're down to 0.25 times. But if you want really strong crisis events happening, which eventually I will be playing at this level all the time, you can crank that up. Mid-game start year, end-game start year, and victory year. These are all new sliders, and they all do different little things. The mid-game start year, this controls which is the earliest year that mid-game events such as machine uprisings and the Horde crisis can occur. So there's mid-game events that can happen. I think even... Actually, would that be a mid-game or an end-game event? Hey, DJ, if you're still there, is a Fallen Empire Awakening considered an end-game event or a mid-game event? Not specific, but the examples of machine uprisings and the Horde crisis, those are 2 different things. I don't think we have the Horde crisis. It's neither. Okay, duly noted. Because it's on a separate timer and it depends on the individual fleet strength or power of certain empires throughout the galaxy. I'm guessing that's why, eh? So if you lower the mid-game start year down to 22-25, Fallen Empire Awakening and War in Heaven are their own thing. I thought so, okay. But I figured I'd ask because plenty of people were probably thinking the same thing, and we're going to ask the same thing. So if you actually turn the mid-game start year down to 22-25, it's entirely possible for a machine uprising or various other mid-game events to occur extremely early in the game. If you don't like those happening so early, you could crank this up to 2375 is the latest. I think normal is about 2300. The end game start year. This controls which is the earliest year that end game events such as the end game crisis and Fallen Empire Awakening can occur. So if Fallen Empire, I don't know why it says that. If Fallen Empire Awakening is its own thing, then I don't think that should be there in that little tooltip. So the endgame start year, the earliest you can set that to is 2250. So can you imagine an endgame crisis showing up before you're even 100 years into the game? That'd be crazy. But you can also crank this way up there, and I mean way up there, all the way up to the year 3000. If you plan to play a stupid long game, you can put that way up there if you so want. But that basically kind of guarantees that an endgame crisis won't appear before a certain setting that you have it at. And then the victory year, this controls at which year the game will end with the highest scoring empire being the winner. So there's no longer the 3 victory conditions of dominate most of the planet yourself, have your Federation control most of the planet, or just wipe out everybody else. There's actually a scoring system where the victory year, once the year 2450 rolls in, for example, or even earlier, you can't put the victory year earlier than the mid-game or end-game start year, thankfully. So the lowest you can have the victory year is the year 2300. And of course, you can turn that way higher if those other years are up. You can also turn this off, obviously. But if you want to set kind of a time limit on your game, which honestly I would kind of recommend you probably do it around like 2,500 or something like that. That's a 300-year game. That's a pretty long year game, maybe 2,600 at the longest, because you just want there to be a flat-out winner by this point. You can set that, and then it's, you know, whichever empire scores the most points. So it'll be kind of like in Civilization, when there's a turn limit to the game. Whichever empire is the most productive and the most developed by that amount of turns in the game, then they are declared the winner. This is the same kind of thing with Stellaris. The difficulty is very different now. We have Cadet, Ensign, Captain, Commodore, Admiral, and Grand Admiral. I'm not sure which one would be quote-unquote normal, but Grand Admiral is supposed to give a lot more bonuses to the AI empires. On higher difficulties, AI empires that are not subjects of players get bonuses to their economy and research. So if you lower the difficulty down to Cadet, they don't have those bonuses. In fact, I think they actually have a couple penalties. And then around like Ensign or Captain, they have no bonuses whatsoever. I can't remember which one it is. But they're basically on par with a player. And then Commodore, Admiral, Grand Admiral, you know, those bonuses that they have is bigger. Scaling difficulty. This is a very interesting option. When this is enabled, any AI bonuses from the difficulty settings scale up over time, starting at 0 and reaching maximum at the endgame start year. So if you have your endgame start year very early and you're playing on Grand Admiral and you have scaling difficulty on, your AI empires get massive bonuses in the game to their overall production, and at a very early point. If you have scaling difficulty on and that end game start year is much later, they still get those bonuses, and those bonuses do increase over time, but it'll be a much more gradual increase than if you had the end game start much earlier. Ensign is normal, I think. Captain is the first difficulty where the AI starts getting bonuses. That sounds about right. I wasn't 100% sure which one it was, Oddball, so thank you for clarifying. So I do believe Cadet, they actually have a couple penalties just for the sake of easier difficulty. AI aggressiveness, again, low, normal, high. This controls how likely AI empires are to declare war on their enemies, and thus the overall number of wars that are started over the course of a campaign. Regardless of the aggressiveness setting, the AI will still only declare war if their attitude towards the target permits it. So that's a nice add-on. They have to have a negative opinion of you. They have to really dislike you to go to war with you. But again, there are more likely to be way more wars if the AI aggressiveness is on high than if it's on low. Empire placement, this is the same as it used to be. If you want them randomly spread out throughout the galaxy, have them on random. If you want them all packed together in certain sections, have it on clusters. Advanced neighbors, if you turn this off, then none of the advanced AI empires that have a tech bonus, an additional colony or two, and I think a bonus in traditions already completed. If that's off, they won't spawn next to you. If it's on, they can spawn next to you. Hyperlane density. This one's really, really fun. The hyperlanes, they're automatically generated when the galaxy is being generated when you start a brand new game. You can reduce it so that there's only half as many hyperlanes as normal, or you can crank it all the way up to whatever full is. So 2.75 times is quite a bit, but when you have this on full, the galaxy looks ridiculous. We'll actually take a peek in just a second. These two are kind of extremely similar. Abandoned gateways and wormhole pairs. These can be set to differing values so that you either have no gateways and wormholes showing up in your galaxy, all the way up to a lot of gateways and wormholes showing up in your galaxy. I actually started a very short game earlier today where I had these cranked all the way to 5, and it was like every 5th system has a freaking wormhole or old gateway in it. So if you want lots of additional means of getting around the galaxy that you can eventually unlock the secrets of at a later point, once you get the appropriate technologies, turn these modifiers up, because gateways and wormholes can teleport you halfway across the galaxy way faster than going through all the hyperlanes, obviously. Guaranteed habitable worlds. This is a pretty interesting one. By default, the galaxy would generate habitable worlds that were pretty much guaranteed to be the same climate type as yours. It would do at least one, sometimes two, but sometimes you'd get screwed over with RNG, and they wouldn't really be very close to you. You can actually turn this option off, but if you have this set to 1 or 2, then the galaxy will attempt to generate 1 or 2 of those guaranteed habitable worlds, not just near your empire for your native species, but also for other empires. So it just makes it, you know, kind of gives you that peace of mind where it's like, okay, there are definitely going to be at least 1, maybe 2 worlds that I can quickly colonize and use to expand my empire and improve my production. That's to kind of help you out in the early game. In Iron Man mode, this is the same as it's always been. Eligible for achievements, you cannot save at any time. It does it every month, blah, blah, blah. And turning it off, save at any time, but you can't get achievements. So we're actually going to take a brief look at some of these different things. Let's take a look at the hyperlane density first, because it's hilarious when you have this set to full. So a normal hyperlane density galaxy, let's just load this up really quickly. Screw it, that looks good. While this generates, this is going to be going in. We're up to 33 viewers, supposedly. Big thank you to everybody who's coming by to watch me live stream this. I greatly appreciate it. I'm quite content with just 3 viewers, so getting 11 times that number, it's a little different. And there's a whole bunch of people in the viewers list that I don't recognize, but quite a few that I do. Thanks to everybody for coming by. Cool Easy Gaming, what's going on, buddy? Broken Arrow, good to see you again, man. It's a pleasure to be back. Okay, so we can't see the whole galaxy right off the hop anymore. That's a kind of different thing that's changed. But this is with regular hyperlane density. Been quite a while since your cups has been here. Yeah, I know. So this is with regular hyperlane density. You can see what I mean. It looks kind of normal, like what you would expect. To check out more hyperlanes, we'd have to send out our science ships to explore the galaxy and discover those hyperlanes. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to quickly boot out of this. Trying to learn before I get home. Well, hopefully I can help you out with that one scene. I'm just going to call you one Cena. You're Cena from now on. So we're going to jump into yet another game again. So that was normal hyperlane density at 1 times normal value. Let's turn it up to full just for funsies and start this up. Glad to be here to learn. I'm glad that you're here to watch there, John Wildboy. Greatly appreciated. I don't know. I don't really know if it's well-deserved there, DJ. Appreciate it, though. Okay, so let's take a look at it. This is with full hyperlane density. There's pretty much no such thing as choke points when you have full hyperlane density because, well, I mean, there's the hyperlanes between the different spiral arms, and there's an obvious choke point there. But throughout the actual spiral arm in the galaxy, there's pretty much no choke points. So it's a lot more difficult to lock down specific sections of the galaxy that you want to bring under your control. So it's pretty comical with this high hyperlane density on. Like, for example, this system here in the middle, it has 8 hyperlanes branching off of it to every single neighboring star. Is my sweet baby Jesus exactly, oddball? Is one planet strategy still a viable strategy? No. Actually, one planet strategy was made pretty much completely undoable with 2.0, and it's not just because of the changes to the economy. You can still have an extremely productive single planet that is cranking out resources across the board for you. The big killer to one planet strategy was the changes to the overall border system, where you have to build individual star bases, in each system to get more resources. And because of the differences in that border system, where you can't just plop down a single outpost somewhere and then next thing you know you have like 7 star systems under your control from it, because it doesn't work like that anymore. One planet strategy is no longer a thing, unfortunately. So that was honestly one of the first empires that I deleted from my custom empire list. And I may have teared up a little when I did that. Lowest habitable planets with max hyperlanes. Go! We can do that if you want. Maybe not with our first stream game, because our first stream game is going to be a lot more about like, kind of learning the ropes, right? But I like your thinking there. I like your thinking there, Cena. And again, if you also want like a metric crap ton of wormholes and abandoned gateways that you can use to move around the galaxy all over the place as well, you can crank those up too. It's really silly. Oh shoot, you know what? I should have looked at some other stuff that you can do. It's not just that, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in the game that's changed as well that I have a funny feeling a lot of people aren't really going to notice. So let's get back into that. I should have just stayed in that other game file there. I'm probably going to stream for the next, what time is it? Probably about 30 to 40 minutes just to go over some of the new stuff and identify some of the things that you can recognize like right off the bat, and then other in-game stuff that will require getting to later on. We'll take a look at once I actually fire up a game, I think. So there's a couple new screens over here on the left-hand side. So we've got the market. This is more of an internal market than anything else. This is where you sell and buy the different resources throughout your empire. When you sell them, you get energy credits, and when you buy them, you spend energy credits. So if you want to convert, say, I've got 200 food, so say I want to convert my food to minerals, what I do is I sell my food. I just sold 200 food. I used the -100 option twice to sell my 200 food. Got about another 140 energy credits, and now I can pop into the minerals section, and I can use those energy credits I just got from selling them to buying more minerals. I can do that. So what's new for console? I'm actually going through that right now, GB. Lowest hyperlane plus max gateways and wormholes seems fun. That was actually one that I just thought of when I said max hyperlanes and max gateways and wormholes, because you go all over the place so easily. Rush to tech it and have a huge advantage getting around the galaxy. Exactly. The downside of that is everybody in the galaxy does get that tech. So that's how you use this internal market. You can also let's sell these consumer goods just for the fun of it. You can also you will notice that the values will change for example, as I sell more consumer goods, I will be getting less energy credits for selling them, and they will be cheaper to buy back. So the markets can get flooded with stuff. And this is essentially how you manage and float your internal economies. So if you're lacking in minerals, but you have a lot of food coming in, you just go to the internal market, sell off a whole bunch of excess food, and then buy a whole bunch of minerals that you really need. I didn't realize they updated it. I play on PC, but I'm going to have to go get my Xbox and give it a shot. Well, the conversion to 2.2 was free, GB, but if you do play on Xbox, you will have to buy the individual upgrades to get all the DLC. Well, the individual expansion passes, because obviously it doesn't carry over from having the PC DLC. Just to let you know. So the other thing you can do in the market is you can set up automatic trades. So I can add a new monthly trade. What resource do I want it to be? It could be any of these or additional ones that show up later on, like volatile motes or exotic gases or rare crystals. Those are things that do turn up. And I think another one is like dark matter, very strategic resources and that kind of stuff. So remember, you're not automatically setting up trades for, like I said, food for minerals. You're setting up automatic trades to sell off X amount of food every month to get energy credits, and then you could be adding another one to automatically be buying X amount of minerals every month to get a certain amount of energy credits. Okay, I kind of messed that up there because now I don't have any food to set up automatic trades. So let's take a look-see. So depending on what you're trying to do, you want to use the option up here at the top, hit buy first, and then select the resource you want to automatically buy every month. If you want to set up an automatic selling thing, hit the sell option and then choose the resource in question. So let's set up automatically selling minerals every month. We can reduce it to, say, I only want to sell 5 minerals every month for the hell of it. You can actually set the minimum sell price that you want it to be. So if I want at least 1 energy credit per mineral, for each mineral that I am selling, you can set that to just 1. If you want that to be higher, set it higher, obviously. And if certain criteria are not met in your automatic, what's the word I'm looking for? In your automatic trades, then I do believe that trade just gets deactivated. I got like the Game Pass for all the DLC on Xbox. Well, there you go. Then you're ready to roll out. you actually do get an alert. Say if I set it where each mineral I sold, I want 20 energy credits, which will pretty much never happen. Let's just confirm this, and then I'll actually unpause the game. And you'll see an alert pops up. Oops, shush. Monthly trade price too high or low. At least one of our monthly trades has a price that doesn't match the min-max price that we allow. Consider updating the price. So right now, what that means is that the buying price of minerals is 1.3 energy credits per mineral, and the selling price of per mineral is 0.7 energy credits per mineral. And you can see that by looking just above the two columns in the middle there. There's A, buy, and X, sell. For doing, a single unit at a time if you're buying or selling. But that gives you the per unit price. So 20 energy credits per mineral is obviously way too high. We can't even set this to 1 because the selling price, I should say, per mineral is only 0.7 energy credits. So we have to turn this off and then confirm it, and that alert will go away. And then this automatic trading will continue on as normal. The minimum sell price or maximum buy price is just if you want to set a limit and be alerted of when, hey, it's not really worth it to sell these anymore, or hey, it's not really worth it to buy these from the market anymore. So it's a nice way to set that up. And like I said, if you were doing it where you actually wanted to sell some minerals every month and instead say buy some consumer goods in return, you need to set up 2 individual monthly trades. So let's just have it so that every month we're selling off those 5 minerals, and every month we are buying 5 consumer goods. So those minerals that we're selling off, we're only selling them for about 0.7 energy credits per month. So we're still getting a few extra energy credits, and that's allowing us to buy a few more consumer goods every month. So you can't do a direct conversion. Like I said, there's always the kind of middleman of the energy credits. You got to base it around the cost or the prices of the energy credits themselves. You're not doing direct conversions from one resource to another. You are either selling a resource for energy credits or buying a resource for energy credits. And you can, like I said, you just got to have those going on at the same time if you need to be doing both of them at the same time. So that's the market. Way better than relying on coming across a trader enclave and trading with them, which you can still do. But the ratio is significantly better now, I think. Like, for example, whereas with everything else, it was pretty much you trade X amount of minerals for half that amount of energy credits, or X amount of energy credits for that amount of minerals with the trader enclaves. And I believe that's still the case. However, now you've got this internal market, and it's very different. You could sell off your alloys, where each single point of alloys gives you almost 3 energy credits now. Alloys are very, very, very valuable. So we could sell off all of our alloys, and bam, now we have several hundred energy credits. I would never recommend doing this, though, because this is really stupid. So that's essentially the new market screen over there on the left-hand side now. What else is new? Oh, fleets and ships. This used to be the ship designer icon, and it's still there. So if you open it up, you can hit right bumper or R1. And now you've got the ship designer. The first thing you'll notice is that you do not design your civilian ships anymore. Those automatically update and upgrade when you get the relevant techs, which is super duper nice. I am very thankful for that. It's a little bit less micromanagement that needs to be done, considering how much micromanagement has to go on your planets now. That is a godsend. So now you're just designing your military ships. The first thing you want to do when you are changing your designs at all is disable this auto-generate designs button. I kind of hate it because right now it's defaulted to on, and if you go in and try to change your Corvette designs, you can't, which is really, really annoying. So say I wanted to change my lasers to mass drivers. Instead of point defense, I want a flak battery. I try to back out, and what the hell? There was no prompt to save it. Oh, look, it didn't save. What the hell's going on? Well, if you highlight your cursor over the save button, cannot manually save design ships while auto design is turned on. Frankly, I really hate that. I don't know why that's the case like that. But I mean, DJ, if you didn't hear me mention that before, I think it's kind of a silly thing to have. So if that could be changed with a future patch, that would be fantastic. Hint, hint. Because I think that will throw a lot of new players off, unfortunately. If you actually want to design a ship, you need to turn off that auto design bullcrap. And like I previously said, the technologies for the basic weapons, we have them all now. So there's new ship type for your corvettes called the picket ship, where if one of your early opponents is actually using missiles, you need a picket ship because you can put point defense on right away, or even flak batteries. So let's go ahead and take a look at the missile built really quickly. So in this small weapon slot, I can put a laser or a mass driver, and in the guided slot, I can put a nuclear missile. So these are all the basic technologies that you actually start the game with now. We can also put in these utility slots, we can put armor or deflectors. Now armor works differently. It actually adds hit points of armor. They're like a secondary coating of hit points. Whereas it used to be just shields that would add a secondary coating of hit points. Now armor does the same thing. And depending on what weapon types you're using, again, you have damage bonuses and damage penalties to different kinds of defenses. So the lasers, they have minus 50% shield damage, but plus 50% armor damage, which is good. And then you have mass drivers, plus 50% shield damage, minus 50% armor damage. Also pretty good. And then, of course, there's missiles with 100% shield penetration and plus 25% hull damage. So if you cut through all of the armor on the enemy ships, these missiles will actually be doing bonus damage to them. And then the auxiliary slot, you get this basic tech called a reactor booster, which increases the power generated on your ships. So you'll see that the reactors are now actually a core component. So as you upgrade your reactors, the reactors will be generating much more power for your ships. But there's the very odd time where in the early game or in the mid game even, where you design a ship and your reactor doesn't have enough power. As you can see, the basic fission reactor is not generating enough power because I slapped so many deflectors onto this Corvette design. So I need the reactor booster, and that increases the power to plus 10. And now I can actually put another weapon on. Boop, there's a laser. So be aware of that. That is a thing. Combat computers are totally different now. We'll be able to look into that more when we actually get into the stream game later on. But for the most part, the other three core components, your radar, or I should say your sensors, your thrusters, and your hyperdrive, those are largely the same. Your thrusters are much more important now with the increase in sublight speed that they give. Because in order for your ships to actually go to actually jump to a different system, they have to move across to the other side of the system they're currently in. So OPS is dead. Yes, I know. I said that earlier. So we'll just follow this science ship for a short minute here. So it's going to fly to this part of the system in order to jump to that other star system like I mentioned previously. Now this is normal. This was very normal previously, because in the old methods, we'd have to fly to the edge of the star system in order to jump to the next star system we want to reach. However, the ships actually have to fly to the correct edge of the system now. So this science ship will be seeing it going to this other star system. See, now it's actually going to be flying across our home system from this one over here, from this hyperlane. It's actually going to be flying over to this hyperlane now as well. So this sets up some pretty interesting opportunities for preparing your defenses of ships. So if you know an enemy fleet is coming from a certain direction, you can actually set up your defending fleets around that hyperlane jump point. Or you can just, have an FTL inhibitor on your starbase to prevent that enemy fleet from really moving anywhere further and really binding them into that system. And then your fleets can combine their power with your starbase if your starbase has a lot of defenses on it, and then they can work together and help to fend off that attacking fleet. So that's something to note, is that the thrusters on your ships actually do have a very important role now. Getting better thrusters increases the sublight speed. Faster sublight speed means that your ships will be able to jump from system to system faster as well, because they're flying across the system faster too. So at the very beginning of the game, as I said, we have different Corvette designs now. The torpedo slots, the old yellow torpedo, were they yellow? No, sorry. The old blue torpedo slots, for example, on the torpedo corvette. It's now the missile boat. It's now a guided slot, and this is where you put your missiles, and I do believe basic torpedoes go here as well, if I remember correctly. DJ, am I saying that right? Torpedoes are also guided, right? I know that energy torpedoes are large slots now. And then you can also slap on, a red laser or a mass driver. There's the old school interceptor, which has the 3 small weapon slots, so you can slap on 2 lasers and a mass driver, and that's fairly balanced. Or you can do it other way around, 2 mass drivers and a laser. Again, fairly balanced. You can't necessarily rely on a single weapon type anymore. If I go all red lasers and come across an enemy using any sort of deflectors, that's going to cause me problems because all of my weapons have 50% reduced damage against their deflectors. Torpedoes are guided. I thought so. Thank you, DJ. Appreciate that. I was pretty sure of that. I just wanted to double check to confirm. So if you do come across an enemy, like I said, because they have early torpedoes or missiles, so they're using a guided slot, you can actually equip your corvettes now as a picket ship, and they will have either sentinel point defense, which are really good at shooting down enemy missiles, or flak batteries, which are good at shooting down strike craft. So even later on in the game, when you get the likes of, flak artillery and stuff like that, you could have your corvettes as the kind of anti-strike craft screen by equipping them with some flak batteries. So that's pretty cool. And then you can kind of balance this out, put a red laser and a mass driver, so on and so forth. So it's really cool, all the new stuff that comes with it. Now, your defense platforms are something different altogether. Your defense platforms are built as additional they're basically just built as additional guns, and they're built on your starbase. So you have this second screen, you have this second tab here on the starbase screen called Defenses, where you can build your defense platforms, and this would be in the left hand side where it says Build Defensive Platforms. That would be where you select the kind of defense platform design you wanted to build. So if you have different defense platforms with different kinds of weapons and different size weapon slots, blah, 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 you would pick which ones you want to build, and you would queue them up. And then they show up in the starbase queue on the far right, and then ones that are completed will actually show up in the defenses list in the middle of this screen here. If at any point you upgrade some or all of your defense platforms, you don't have to go through each and every single one individually and upgrade them individually. You can hit this upgrade all button, and it will automatically apply those design upgrades to all of your defense platforms simultaneously. And if you want to get rid of all your defense platforms for whatever reason, because maybe you're downgrading this starbase, for example, it's no longer going to be a starbase, you're just going to make a little outpost with no additional buildings and stuff, you can disband all your platforms. This last tab is the shipyard, which is where you build your ships. Now, in order for a starbase to construct your ships, it has to have one of these shipyard buildings. And the cool thing about it is that as you upgrade your starbases, once you learn the appropriate technology, of course, and you upgrade your starbases to have more of these module slots, you could fill all 6 of these module slots with shipyards, and then you could build 6 ships at the same time on the same starbase. So, in contrast to having each individual spaceport on your planet building a ship at the same time, and they're all over your goddamn empire, you could potentially have each starbase that you upgrading just mass shipyards on it. You could have each individual starbase building up an entire fleet of ships where it builds 6 ships at a time, and all of those ships are being constructed in the same place. So it's very handy, very useful. There's also all these different building slots. We only have a few basic buildings to start with, but as you get more technologies, you get more stuff available. The trade hub is another basic kind of building. Increases the range that this starbase will collect trade goods. And I'll get into that a little bit more when we get into the stream game a little later today. Like I said, we're just looking at all the new stuff, pretty much. Now, back to the Fleet Manager screen, which is what I started with. I apologize, kind of went off on a tangent. But that's a nice thing. It makes this ship designer a lot less cluttered. You'll probably have multiple different designs of ships, so that you're not constantly reconfiguring your ship designs depending on what your opponent is has their ship designs for. You're probably just going to use a more more multiples of ship designs to have a much more balanced fleet that's kind of ready to take on everything, as well as some specialist fleets that are designed specifically to take on certain enemies. This fleet manager screen is, for lack of a better term, it's fucking awesome. I love it. So on the left side here, you have your templates of fleets. This would be where you select your particular fleet that you want to kind of modify. You press the A button, and then it opens up all these other options. You can hit reinforce fleet, where I'll get into that in a second. But once you hit repair, this fleet will immediately fly back to the nearest starbase it can, or probably even its home base, to get repaired. Same thing with upgrade. You can disband the whole fleet, which gets rid of all of the ships, kind of like it used to. You can add a new ship design to the fleets, and then once you select that, it says choose design, and then you pick the particular ship design in question. The home base is, I'm not 100% clear on how this works, but I do believe when you hit the return option, or when you tell this fleet to reinforce itself, the home base is where this fleet will return to, and the home base is also where the reinforcements will come from. If I'm 100% clear on what's going on. There's also the option to take point, currently set to encourage allied fleets to follow. So if you have a specific fleet that's built in a certain fashion that you want to get in closer in front of your other ships, maybe it's got more defenses or stronger defenses than your other fleets, you wanted to get in there first, you can select this take point option. So when it's paired up with other fleets and they're flying into a battle together in a big group, whichever fleets you have this take point option enabled for, they'll be doing just that. They will take point. So this could be a good option if you have if you have, say, a fleet of like cruisers, for example. You actually want them to be the first ones taking hits because they have good defenses, and then you want them to get in there, and the first couple volleys from your opponent's ships get soaked up by your cruisers. You can enable this option. I highly recommend playing around with it, figure out what works for you, figure out what works with certain ships and certain enemies. And of course there's the rename option, rename the fleet. And then how this works is, in terms of reinforcing your fleet, is you go over to the right here, and if there were different kinds of ships in this particular fleet, they would be listed here, not just this one type that you see me selecting. And if you want more of a particular ship, say for example there was also like a design of cruisers, there was a few cruisers that I had in this fleet, I would simply hit the right stick a little bit more, increase the amount that I want this fleet to have at maximum, and then if I had the alloys to construct them, I hit reinforce fleet, and then these corvettes, these additional 5 corvettes that I added to the fleet, will start being constructed. They'll be added to a construction queue somewhere at one of my star bases. I do believe that happens at the home base that you've selected for that fleet. And it's not just this one, like I said, it's not just this one type of ship. If you have like 4 different kinds of ships and you're like, I want to increase all the amounts of these ships by like 2, and then you hit reinforce fleet, all of those ships will get queued up at the shipyard. So they get queued simultaneously. You just got to wait until they're finished building, or have this fleet roaming around doing other stuff, and the reinforcements can catch up with them at some point. So it's super awesome. I love this fleet manager screen. It's fantastic. Easiest way to create a new fleet is simply hit create new, and then the first thing you do is you choose the design of one of the ships you want in it. So near this bottom where my cursor is glowing right now, if I had more designs, if I had more different kinds of ships, I would select the ones that I want to put in this fleet, and then choose that. By default it starts off, well, you got 1 ship, and then I can increase that to however many I want, and if I want this fleet to instead have, say, 6 ships for whatever reason, I can select that, and then I can hit reinforce fleet, and all those 6 ships will be queued at a shipyard. Also, there's also some other nice quality of life things. This reinforce all button. If all of my fleets have suffered some losses, or a couple have suffered losses and I've increased the amount of ships that I want in some of those fleets, I'll hit reinforce all, and all of those ships across all of my fleets will be queued up for construction at whatever shipyards are set up for that. Whoops, wrong button. Same thing with this upgrade all button. If I hit upgrade all, this recalls all of the fleets to come back to their shipyards, and upgrade to the latest design specs, which is fantastic. Return All very much does the same thing. It just returns them to their home base or whatever, or nearest star base, one of the two. So yeah, rather than having to select each fleet to do that individually, this fleet manager is an absolute godsend. I think it is a fantastic addition, very well designed, pretty easy to figure out what does what as well. The only thing you got to be cautious for is that you can't just automatically use the directional buttons to go in and start editing a fleet. You have to select the fleet in question in this column on the left, press A, and then you can get the additional options such as like I said, adding more ships to it, or removing ships from it, upgrading it, disbanding it, moving its home base to a different station, blah, blah, blah. So I think this is fantastic, and it's also where the ship designer is, so do keep that in mind. I'm sure that'll be an easy one to figure out as time goes on. So DJ, if you could do me a favor and pass along that the team that made the fleet manager, they did a fantastic job, and I fucking love them. Not so much where I would bear their children, but pretty goddamn close. Another one here, this is an additional one, claims. This opens the claims map. Obviously, I have nothing right now. Hi. Well, thanks. So I've got nothing for claims right now because I haven't made any. But claims are essentially, when you claim a system and it's like, I want that system under my control. These would be the things that you do when it's like, I'm going to be going to war with somebody who disputes my claim because either they take over that system. Wow, the dimensional horror went down way too easy. How easy is way too easy, Jeremy? So if you have certain claims on systems and various other things, they'll show up in this screen, so it's all bundled up nicely together, which is pretty dope. Federation screen is the same. Map modes, some new stuff here. The details map mode, if you disable this, it doesn't fully disable everything. Like, you'll still actually see the resources available in individual systems, whereas before, if you disable the details map mode, it wouldn't show you that. Now, if you enable it, you'll also see the resources you are getting from systems in your borders, where you are getting resources. So, as you can see, I'm getting plus 10 energy, plus 10 minerals, and plus 11 trade from my home system. If I disable it, those go away, but I still see that there's also 2 energy, 3 minerals, 2 society, and 3 engineering science available in that system. So that's what that's a change to the details map mode. Keep that in mind. 30k total fleet power. That sounds about normal, dude. 30 to 40k for the dimensional horror. That's I'd say that's about normal. There's still the sectors map mode, but sectors are kind of different. Hyperlanes map mode. When activated, the hyperlanes map mode displays hyperlanes on the galaxy map if you have the technology to view them. Of course you do. Unions map mode. When activated, political unions such as subjects and federations will share the same map color on the galaxy map. So with this enabled, if we had encountered other empires and some of those other empires were like it says, subjects, or they were in a federation together, or I think even defensive pacts, their empires will actually be indicated by a single border color, a single border and empire color, as opposed to each and every single one of them being different. If you enable the unions map mode, basically alliances are shown as alliances on the map, so it's a lot easier to tell who's friendly with who. Empire map mode, that's the same. Diplomatic map mode, that's largely the same. Opinion map mode, AI attitude. Neighbor map mode, slightly different. Neighbor map mode will show you which empires are considered to be your own empire's neighbors. So nearby empires will have different colors if they are neighboring you. How does search known star system? I actually haven't used this, so if there is a specific star system that you're looking for, you can use the search function. We're going to try and search for Blorg's Bane, and we'll see what happens when I do this. I have no idea. I should play around with this more to see how well it works exactly. Blorg's Bane, and nothing happened. Okay. I'll play around with that a little bit more to kind of figure it out, but that's generally the gist of it. So those different map sections are in there, but there's also one more, the trade routes map mode. When activated, the trade routes map mode displays all your trade routes on the galaxy map. So it's kind of tough to really show what this does without additional star bases in place. But with this on, you can see above my home system, there are two new little icons. There's a little blue shield and a little kind of box with an arrow pointing into it. The blue shield represents if there is protection for trade in that area, and the little blue box resembles if trade is actually being collected in that area. When you are in this trade route mode, if there are systems that have a trade route going through them and they are not considered protected, you can either correct that by having a nearby starbase to protect that particular system, or a starbase close by with hangars in it, or you can actually set up your fleets to patrol. That's another interesting thing. So we can take our military fleets, manage, and you go to the patrol option, which is this ship with the binoculars, and you hit patrol and select another system. And now, if we unpause the game, that fleet will actually patrol from this system over to this system, and they'll fly back and do the same. You can set a much longer patrol route if you want to, but having military fleets in the area increases the trade protection. The reason why you want to kind of keep an eye on your trade protection in your within your empire, and especially along your trade routes, is because if there is no trade protection in certain systems, the amount of piracy goes up, so you are not collecting 100% of the available trade goods, and there is a chance that a fleet of pirates will spawn. So it's not like last time where when you make a frontier outpost or you colonize your first planet and whatnot, then pirates just miraculously appear out of the blue because reasons! Now it's actually, there have been pirates that are pirating your trade goods along this trade route for a while now, and they've been making profits off it, so all of a sudden they've actually got a pretty powerful fleet you got to deal with, and they will spawn within somewhere along that trade route and start attacking your orbital stations. I'll be able to go into this a little more once we're actually in a game, but when you're in this trade routes system as well, this is how you would redirect those trade routes. Your trade capital initially starts off as your homeworld, and I don't think that can change. But if you want, like say if I had a star base up here and it had a trade route that was going down this way and then down over here and then up to our home system, I can choose to redirect it where the trade route comes from here over to here, where I have another star base that's upgraded and has better trade protection, so I can reroute it over this way, and then that star base has its trade route going to this star system and then down to its trade capital. If that route, say for example, I just wanted to redirect that route because it has better protection and I'm getting more trade goods from that entire route, I can do it that way. And I'll show you how to do this once we get into the stream game later on. What else is different? Technologies have drastically changed. How you actually pick your technologies and whatnot hasn't changed, but in a lot of cases what they actually do has. For example, you don't improve your buildings anymore, whereas previously it's like, oh, let's get field modulation, now we have the grade 2 power plant or some crap like that. No, now it's let's upgrade the energy credits output from our technicians. So your technicians that are producing energy, now they produce more, they produce 20% more. The same with increased science output, so you increase the science output, specifically physics, from your researchers by 20% with this. This one will increase your overall research speed, so that's like the same as it's always been. And then we can pick this option, biodiversity studies, increase society research from researchers by 20% as well. And then nanomechanics, increase engineering research from researchers by 20% as well. If for whatever reason I didn't pick all three of these, let's say I went with planetary unification, which actually increases our unity output by flat +2 every month now, which is pretty cool. And then this one we changed to powered exoskeletons because we want to try and rush for robots or something like that. Once quantum theory is finished, our researchers are actually producing more physics science than the other three branches. Which can be a pretty interesting take. So if you're beelining for techs in a specific tree, you can still specifically choose to upgrade the science output from your jobs in that particular branch. So yeah, a lot of the technologies have changed. Go over them and what they do as you play throughout the game. but for the most part, a lot of the core fundamentals are still the same. You know, quantum theory, biodiversity studies, and nanomechanics. Those just gave you the better science labs in the previous game, so they increased your science output. They still increase your science output in this version as well. They just, how they go about doing it is just slightly different. And what was the last thing I wanted to look at? Leaders. Leaders are a little bit different. As far as I can tell, there's no leader cap. Like, you have no limit to how many leaders you can have. But they require energy credits to recruit them now. They no longer require influence. There's a lot of other crap that requires influence to do now. So this is kind of new. If you have a good economy, you will have no problem recruiting leaders. So I'm just going to recruit a whole bunch of scientists for the hell of recruiting a whole bunch of scientists. Let's go back to the market and sell off all of my resources. Literally all of my resources. Oops, hang on. There we go. Got rid of all my excess resources. Now I have a whole bunch more energy credits. Let's recruit a whole bunch more scientists. Got another meticulous one. Got another computing one. Oh, look, an expert in biology. Oh, look, rocketry. Was that rocketry? It looked like it said population per second. Expertise, materials, adaptable. There we go. So how many scientists do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's the very beginning of the game, and I have 14 scientists. Like, that was unheard of in the old version. I think previously, at the very beginning of the game, you were limited to like 8 leaders total, so that's pretty different. Also, some of the traits on your leaders is different as well. This scientist is expert in materials. So whereas before, if I threw him in engineering and he was researching a project which was considered a materials project, he'd have a 10% research boost. Now it's 15%. So experts actually have a pretty significant bonus to them now. And you're better off. Expertise propulsion. Okay, that's why it was changed. And experts now are actually really, really valuable. So a diverse range of different scientists with expertise in various fields is super duper useful. And I do believe they still increase the odds that a research project of the same type appears once they complete the current project. Voidcraft, the icon for Voidcraft was changed from blue to this orange one because Voidcraft is a predominantly engineering kind of project now. So thankfully that's been updated. So the expertise traits on your scientists now actually kind of accurately represents which kind of research branch they would be good or better off heading up. So, for example, propulsion, this icon is orange, so you probably want to put this scientist in engineering because propulsion projects will mostly show up in engineering. This guy, an expert in new worlds, which is a green icon, so put him in society because that's more of a society research type. And then computing is physics, so throw this guy in physics. He's got a blue icon, that's where you want to put him. Obviously there's different types as well, but like I said, you know, read the new traits. A lot of them are pretty different. Gale speed, for example, slightly different. Increased evasion, increased sublight speed on an admiral, stuff like that. And then oh yeah, I'm looking at the bottom of the screen there. Traditions. The traditions have changed. And of course the ascension perks. Instead of only, I think it was like, what, 20 ascension perks? And that's including consecrated worlds. We now have a lot more. We've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 22, and I don't see consecrated worlds. Are we spiritualist? No, we are not. So I don't see consecrated worlds. So we have 23 ascension perks now. Go through them. Some of them have changed. Ones like Defender of the Galaxy are actually still the same. Damage to endgame crisis factions plus 50%, and everyone's opinion increased plus 20. Some of them, their flavor has changed, or the requirements, it might sound like it's changed, but it really hasn't. Like Transcendence requires 2 other Ascension perks to be selected first, requires the Mind Over Matter Ascension perk. Whereas before it said requires 3 other Ascension perks and requires the Mind Over Matter Ascension perk, but one of those 3 had to be Mind Over Matter. Now it's actually saying it, I think, more appropriately, where it says you need 2 other Ascension perks and Mind Over Matter. So you need at least 3 other Ascension perks. So Transcendence can be no sooner than your 4th Ascension perk. I think these are worded much better. I like that. But a lot of them have changed. Like Interstellar Dominion, this reduces your starbase influence cost by 20% and your claim influence cost by 20%. So, go through these, study them a little bit. A lot of ones that you might be familiar with already, they've changed somewhat. Technological Ascendancy, still the same. It just actually adds the flavor now. Rare technologies are now 50% more common, which is, exactly the same as it used to be. But it actually says it now. And the traditions themselves have actually gone through a pretty severe overhaul. For example, pretty much the number one go-to tradition pick now is expansion, whereas it used to be discovery, which is still a very, very good one of your first traditions to go with, especially if you're still doing a tech rush. Expansion is actually much more important now because you have this one here called Reach for the Stars. Starbase influence cost reduced by 10%. This helps a huge amount with early game expansion, and is pretty much the sole reason why starting with the expansion tradition tree is super important. And then Starbase upkeep reduced by 20% and administrative cap increased by 20. Okay bonuses, but there's also these other ones. Colonization Fever, new colonies start with 1 additional pop, which is huge. And then a new life. This increases pop growth speed across your empire by 10%. So these are both still, these are pretty much identical to the old traditions in the old expansion tree, but they're still extremely, extremely good. Actually, that's not true. Adopting the expansion tree gave you the additional pop, and then Colonization Fever had your capital building producing more unity. That's what it was. So, but these two are still super important in the early game, and expansion is like super duper. Like I can't stress it enough. 99% of the time, well, maybe not that much. I'd say 90% of the time you're going to want to start with the expansion tree. The other 9% of the time you're going to want to start with discovery, and that 1% of the time, if you're either goofing off or doing super niche stuff, you're going to start with something else. Supremacy is very different. You adopt it, and your starbase capacity is increased by 2, and it increases your army damage by 20%. And then you've got this one, Overwhelming Force. Ship fire rate increased by 10%, and orbital bombardment damage increased by 20%. So yeah, pretty different there. RC guy, Mobius, in the update history on PS4, they said they added Distant Stars DLC and Megacore support for those. Okay. I'm not sure if you're asking or telling. This is almost a whole new game. Pretty much Clown Attack. You're going to have to go through these and notice what the differences are yourself. A big one that I want to point out is that the domination tree is actually pretty significant now, because it has less to do with what's the word I'm looking for? Subject empires, and it has a little bit more to do with like your internal stability and performance. Because there's this one here called Workplace Motivators. It's the one at the very bottom right. Resource output from workers and slaves increased by 5%. This is a 5% bonus to all your workers. So your miners, your technicians, your farmers, and your slaves. 5% flat bonus across your empire. That's pretty... I mean, it's not huge, but it's pretty significant. This could be a big boost to overall output throughout your empire, especially if you're playing very wide. I'm asking, no. Those aren't in the game yet. So yeah, like I said, the traditions are drastically changed. Go through them, study them at your own pace. Highly recommend it. Policies and edicts are very different as well. You actually start with Map the Stars now, which can be activated for 100 influence. If you look at the update history for 2.2, it's there, but they're not available. If you go to the store and try to buy them, this is almost a whole new game. I'm asking, look at the update history for 2.2. I mean, I know that Distant Stars was brought out with 2.1 and that Megacorp came out with 2.2, but we don't have them on console yet. I would like to point out that there actually is a bug in the game right now with these edicts. When you activate them, it'll say it's active, and it will stay active for 10 years, and there is actually an alert that you get at the bottom of the screen now that tells you once one of these active edicts runs out, which is super cool, and I'm really glad that was added. However, just like with the old edicts, which would cost a monthly amount of influence to maintain it, you can disable these at any time. And I know what now I no longer have this bonus from Map the Stars. but I've still lost the 100 influence. Like, it's gone. I'm not getting that back. So just be aware of that. I mean, it's not exactly game breaking, but you don't want to go and enable and disable all these edicts. You don't need to do that. If you're dealing with any of these edicts, activate them. They will automatically turn off once their time runs out. So even if they last for a long time, like 17 years, as opposed to just a normal 10, you'll get an alert that has run out, and you can go back and reactivate it. And it's just the flat cost as soon as you activate it. There's no maintenance, upkeep, or anything like that. I guess it will wait to see when they drop. I mean, they haven't even been announced that they're coming out to console yet, RC guys. So I'm not sure if that. I don't think that was intentional for the history to say that for PS4s. But I can tell you right now, we don't have them. Some of the policies have changed as well. Orbital bombardment is different. When you have indiscriminate bombardment, allows the full use of all orbital weaponry with no regrets to life on the surface. It's possible that you can damage structures and kill pops with this kind of orbital bombardment, and there will be more planetary devastation as well. Selective allows only the bombardment of identified military targets, blah blah blah. The war philosophies largely work the same. Resettlement largely works the same. First contact protocol the same. Empires will dislike you a little bit more as soon as you meet if you're set to aggressive, but peaceful they will actually like you, unless they're also set to aggressive. Now, initial border status, this is a pretty big one. This is how can empires interact with you, and are they allowed to explore your empire when you first meet them? You're going to want this on closed every game. If it's open, it actually gives the opportunity where if you haven't fully built up your borders and gotten the choke points you want to yet, or you have, say, a gap between your two points in your empire. If this is open, it's possible for an AI empire to fly a construction ship into a system neighboring yours, like actually kind of in the middle that you don't have a starbase at yet, and they can build a starbase there, and then it just fucks with your whole plan because next thing you know, they've kind of cut you off. So keep this closed. Food policy. This one's pretty important. You've got strict rationing, which reduces the amount of food upkeep for your pops, so you need less food for your current population, but it also reduces their growth speed and the happiness of your biological pops. Dietary balance is kind of like the default normal that we're very used to in the old version, but nutritional plentitude, which I think is spelled incorrectly. I think you're missing a T there, DJ, just a heads up. I think. Nutritional plentitude should be your go-to food policy, because while it increases the amount of food upkeep for each of your pops, it increases their happiness by 5%, so they'll be more productive, and your planets will have more stability. But it also increases the pop growth speed of your biological pops by plus 10%, which is major. Pops are everything in this version of the game, and you want to get as many pops as quickly as possible all the time. So activate this right at the start of every game you play. Pretty much want to leave it at that. Economic policy, this can be changed. I don't really recommend it, but you've also got, you can have a civilian economy where jobs that are producing consumer goods, they'll produce 15% more, but jobs that are producing alloys will produce 25% less. So honestly, I don't really know why you would ever pick civilian economy, to be totally honest. And then the other option that I would highly consider, if you can get away with it, consumer goods from jobs minus 25%, so 25% less consumer goods from jobs, but plus 15% alloys from jobs. So if you're about to really ramp up and go to war and build up some ships, or you want to make sure you're producing a lot of alloys to maintain and reinforce your fleets and stuff like that, you can change this to a militarized economy, and you'll see the amount of consumer goods you're generating go down quite a bit, but you'll see the alloys you're generating go up a decent amount. So there's that. Trade policy is another important one that you want to set to what you want right off the hop. Normally, trade value by default is set to this wealth creation, where each point of trade value earns one more energy credit. So this helps maintain a kind of stable amount of energy credits being generated if necessary. You can change this to two other options. Consumer benefits reduces it where each single unit of trade value or point of trade value gives you 0.5 energy credits and 0.25 consumer goods. So say if our empire was generating 100 trade value, if we had it on wealth creation, it would be generating 100 more energy credits per month. If it was on consumer benefits, it would be generating 50 energy credits per month and 25 consumer goods per month. The last one is marketplace of ideas. It's like the previous consumer benefits one, where each point of trade value is earning 0.5 energy credits per month, but also 0.15 unity per month, and that's pretty big. So if you're going for a unity rush, or if you have enough trade value, or sorry, if you have enough energy where picking this option won't drastically affect your energy income, you can pick this option to help you get those traditions even more quickly. So if you are definitely going for a unity rush, like I said earlier, the example I provided, if we were generating 100 trade every month, if we had 100 trade value coming in every month, we'd be getting 50 energy credits per month still, but we'd also be getting 15 additional unity by selecting this trade policy. So keep that in mind. The consumer benefits trade policy, I mean, if you're really hurting for consumer goods, by all means, sure. But that's easily rectified with so many other ways. And then marketplace of ideas is between wealth creation and marketplace of ideas. I guarantee you're probably going to have this active almost all the time. Robotic workers, right now it's allowed because we're a materialist. I have to double check if you can still have robotic workers, just no AI if you're spiritualist. Refugees, that's the same. Population controls, that's the same. Slavery and purging is the same. So yeah, those are the major key policies that I wanted to go over. Food policy, economic policy, trade policy, and thankfully initial border status is defaulted to closed. So this just makes it easier for you to capture choke points and get certain areas under your control. So yeah, I think that will largely sum it up. It's been a little over 2 hours now. Oh, I wanted to point something out. On the outliner, it also shows, let's ignore the sectors. It kind of automatically generates sectors if you colonize a planet that's a little ways away from an existing sector, blah, blah, blah. We'll see that happen later on. I wanted to point out in the outliner, we'll get 2 new sections. There's shipyards, so star bases that have a shipyard building, even if it, or sorry, shipyard module, even if they only have 1 shipyard module, they'll actually show up in this shipyards portion. But as you get more star bases that are upgraded from the basic outpost, there will be a whole nother star bases section as well. So for example, if you upgrade certain star bases to be trade hubs or major defensive points for your fleets to kind of, you know, get some additional fire support from those star bases, I believe they're called bastions. There will be a whole nother section in the outliner for that. But apart from that, numerous other things will show up here. Factions, terraforming planets, your civilian ships are still here, your planets are still here, your military fleets are still here. But you can also rearrange this. Eh? Did you know that? I'm going to hit the X button and move the planets closer down because I want things like my civilian ships and my military fleets to be closer to the top. So I'm going to hit left stick and move my military fleet section up to the top because I want to. And then let's move the shipyards way up there. Let's move sectors way down at the bottom because I don't care. We'll actually move civilian ships down a little bit more. So do be aware that you can do that in your outliner. You can also hit the left and right bumpers if you have a really long list of either civilian ships or fleets or planets or whatever. If certain sections in your outliner are huge and you don't want to collapse all of them because you want to see the status on them at all times, you can actually use the left and right bumper to quickly swap between sections now, which is super cool. And believe me, that'll be really handy once the outliner gets a lot more bloated because of a lot more ships and fleets and stuff. And lastly, one final thing. Want to see something cool? See how in the very bottom right there is an icon for the X button? You press that and you can rename systems. You can claim systems if you were able to, if you had the influence. You can also do this thing called restrict systems. And restricting systems is a pretty neat little thing. If you don't want any ships whatsoever, military, civilian, doesn't matter. If you don't want any ships passing through a system in particular, because say there's a dimensional horror in there or an ether drake, and you don't want to lose any ships because they're just going to fly through that system and get blasted, you can restrict that system. And now when you go to the galaxy map, it will show up in red. None of your ships will fly into that system anymore. All of your ships will try to go around it if they can. So let's disable that. This is also how you would claim a system. And if you were claiming a system from an AI empire, that gives you the casus belli to go to war with them because you want that system under your control. And this is also how you rename systems. So systems within your borders, you hit the X button, or I believe it's square on PS4. And then you'll see in the bottom right, press A to rename system. Boop. We're going to rename Rektha. And now we're going to name it something else. Yeah, sure, we'll go with that. That works. So our home system is now Mobius. Boop, there we go. And now you'll see that it says our home planet of Rek Omak is in the Mobius system. All of our ships are in the Mobius system. We go to the galaxy map and we've got our home planet in the Mobius system now. So one more last little cool thing that I wanted to point out, but it's been in 2 hours and 15 minutes, but wow, I have to learn a lot coming from the old version. Yeah, I know, we all do. I hope you make tutorials on 2.2. You're great at showing how to play Stellaris. I appreciate that, RC guy. I will be showing how to play. A lot of my videos, I went back and actually put a kind of note in the title that they're obsolete. So a lot of my old mechanics videos, I'll be redoing them. Because, well, they are flat out obsolete. So I will be doing things like tier lists for more advanced players sometime down the road, but I'll also be going over the basic mechanics videos as well. I'll be redoing all those, you know, how do you get energy credits, what do you use them for, how do you get minerals, what do you use them for, etc, etc, etc. Actually, you know what I didn't show? Randomize Empire. The song playing in the background just reminded me of one last thing I wanted to show you guys. Before we call her a day. I mentioned that there is new music, mainly from Synthetic Dawn, but another cool thing, you go to the music player, there's a couple additional music tracks that are not from DLC we have yet. So the Synthetic Dawn added the Synthetic Dawn main theme, and then we gotta scroll way down. We also got Robo Sapiens and Synthetic God. All three of those are pretty good. The Synthetic Dawn main theme is kind of a rehash of the Creation and Beyond main theme, which is pretty cool. Robo Sapiens and Synthetic God, both really good ones as well, some of my favorites. The one that's playing right now, Doomsday. This is actually from the Apocalypse DLC. One of my favorites, very good. Into the Dark, this is from Distant Stars, also a very good one of my favorites. And Hidden Motives is from Megacorp. I didn't really care much for the Megacorp soundtrack, but listening to Hidden Motives a little bit in game, I think I'll probably take a bit more of a liking to it. So lots of new stuff in the music player as well, not just stuff from Synthetic Dawn. We got a couple nice new tracks in there. Like I said, Into the Dark, Doomsday, both very good. Synthetic God, very good. Yeah, I do believe that 100% sums up everything that I wanted to go over in this particular stream. If you haven't noticed, we've also got a lot of new loading screens as well, from different DLCs that'll be coming out later. I don't think I needed to mention that the title screen got updated, because I think that was pretty obvious from everybody who popped in here at the beginning of the stream. That's going to sum it up for me now. It's getting on 2 o'clock in the afternoon my time. I'll be back again in a few hours. I very much need to, like, at the very least eat something, because I'm hungry as shit. And I'll be back later on. We will start our first stream game in 2.2 in a few hours. So again, pay attention to me on Twitter or in the Discord channel. I'll announce when I go live. It won't be my usual start time this evening. I'll actually be starting, closer to probably about 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I just want to take a short little break there. And we'll be back later with some plain old gameplay. So those of you that watch this on YouTube, thank you very much for watching. And a big thank you to everybody who came by to watch me doing this live. Had a lot of viewers live through Twitch here today. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks, DJ, for coming by and helping answer a few questions. Sometimes it's like, I know the answer to this, but now I'm second guessing myself. So it's handy having you around to be able to ask those. Greatly appreciate it. John Wildboy, Jeremy, Colby, Chrono, RC Guy. Hope to see you guys later on with the regular gameplay stream. Those of you who are others of you who are also here: Cena, GB Record, Elk, RC Guy, Who am I missing? Cups, and a whole bunch of others who I'm actually not remembering. So I'll see you for another stream in a few hours from now. And for those of you who did get through this whole video for watching it on YouTube, thank you very much. I know it was a very long one, but there was a lot to go over. And I still haven't gone over everything, to be totally honest. So check the links in the description below for additional ways to stay in touch with me. There's my Twitch channel, which I streamed this off of. So if you normally watch me on YouTube, but might get the chance to watch me live, especially now that I'm streaming at different times since I'm not working right now, check out my Twitch channel. There's also my Twitter feed, great way to keep in touch with me, and I'll post important updates such as if I go live with a stream or when I have to postpone or cancel one. And of course, the Discord channel that I also mentioned, great way to communicate with other members of this small Stellaris Console Edition community, and another very, very good way to keep in touch with me and stay up to date on important news and announcements. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more Stellaris Console Edition content. There's going to be people like myself, A-Spec, Ryantium, Black Sun Gaming. We're all here to help you guys out, and we're all going to be putting up those videos to help make this transition to the new version a lot smoother for you folks. Until then, I'll see you around. This is Mobius Wise signing off.